priest discovers something and cancels wedding ceremony, saying, "I cannot allow this union." This unexpected act surprised everyone. Before listening to this emotional story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The morning sun illuminated the streets of New York City, promising a perfect day for a wedding ceremony. Father Michael, a middle-aged man with gentle eyes and graying hair, adjusted his cassock as he prepared to leave his modest residence. He smiled, thinking of the joy he was about to witness at St. Patrick's Cathedral, where he would unite Emily and Jason in matrimony. Emily was a 28-year-old architect, known for her radiant smile and honey-colored eyes that seemed to light up any room. Jason, a successful 32-year-old businessman, was admired for his determination and charisma. The couple had become beloved in the parish over the past few months during the preparations for their big day. Father Michael picked up his Bible, carefully placed it in his worn leather briefcase, and stepped out onto the street. The journey to the cathedral was short, but he liked to walk, taking the opportunity to greet the faithful and observe the city as it awakened. As he walked, his thoughts wandered to the sermon he had prepared. He would speak about love, trust, and commitment, themes he considered fundamental for a happy and lasting marriage. Little did he know that this day would profoundly test his own convictions about these values. As he turned a corner, something caught his attention. A red sports car was parked awkwardly, half on the sidewalk. Father Michael immediately recognized the vehicle. It was Jason's. Worried that something might have happened to the groom, he approached to check. What he saw through the car window made his heart sink. Jason was inside, but he wasn't alone. In his arms was a woman who was definitely not Emily. The two were kissing passionately, oblivious to the world around them. Father Michael felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. The scene before him was unequivocal. The groom, just hours before his wedding, was cheating on his future wife. The priest closed his eyes for a moment, trying to process what he had just witnessed. When he opened them again, he saw Jason getting out of the car, adjusting his tie. The groom froze when he saw the priest standing there, his face instantly turning pale. "Father Michael," Jason stammered, I can explain." The priest raised his hand, silencing him. His voice, normally warm and welcoming, came out grave and sad. "Jason, what are you doing? Emily is waiting for you at the church, trusting in your love and fidelity." Jason lowered his eyes, shame evident on his face. "It was a mistake, Father. A moment of weakness. Please don't tell Emily. It would destroy her." Father Michael felt the weight of the situation on his shoulders. As a man of faith, he believed in the power of forgiveness and redemption, but as someone who valued truth and honesty, the idea of allowing Emily to marry without knowing the truth deeply disturbed him. "Jason," he finally said, "you need to be honest with Emily. She deserves to know the truth before making her vows before God and everyone." The groom shook his head frantically. "I can't, Father. It would ruin everything. Please understand. It was a mistake that will never happen again." As Jason pleaded, the woman in the car discreetly left, quickly disappearing down the street. Father Michael watched her leave, feeling a mixture of compassion and disapproval. "Son," said the priest, placing a hand on Jason's shoulder, "marriage is based on trust and mutual respect. Starting a union with a lie of this magnitude, it's not fair to Emily nor to yourself." Jason seemed to consider the priest's words for a moment, but then his face hardened. "You don't understand, Father. There's a lot at stake. Families, businesses, reputations. I can't just throw all that away." Father Michael felt his heart grow even heavier. The situation was more complex than he had initially imagined. It wasn't just a case of infidelity, but a web of expectations and social pressures that Jason clearly felt. "I'm going to the church now," said Jason, adjusting his suit. "Please, Father, don't say anything. I promise I'll be a good husband to Emily. This will never happen again." Before the priest could respond, Jason got into the car and left, leaving Father Michael alone with his turbulent thoughts. The priest resumed his walk to the cathedral, each step weighing like lead. Upon arriving at the imposing St. Patrick's Cathedral, Father Michael was greeted by the typical bustle that precedes a wedding ceremony. Decorators were giving the final touches to the flower arrangements, musicians were tuning their instruments, and guests were beginning to arrive, dressed in their best clothes. At the center of all this activity was Emily, radiant in her wedding dress. She smiled upon seeing the priest and ran to greet him, her eyes shining with happiness and expectation. "Father Michael, I'm so glad you're here," she exclaimed, holding the priest's hands. "I'm so nervous and so happy at the same time. I can't believe the day has finally arrived." The priest forced a smile, feeling the weight of the secret he carried. "Emily, my dear, you look beautiful," he said, struggling to maintain his composure. As Emily spoke animatedly about her plans for the future, Father Michael felt increasingly torn. How could he conduct this ceremony knowing what he knew? How could he allow Emily to make vows of eternal love to a man who, just an hour ago, was in another woman's arms? Jason's arrival at the church only intensified the priest's internal conflict. The groom seemed composed, smiling and greeting guests as if nothing had happened. His eyes, however, avoided Father Michael's. As the time for the ceremony approached, the priest's dilemma became increasingly urgent. He knew he had a crucial decision to make, one that could forever change the lives of Emily, Jason, and everyone present. With a heavy heart and a mind in turmoil, Father Michael headed to the sacristy for his final moments of preparation. He knelt before the crucifix, seeking divine guidance. "Lord," he whispered, "show me the way. Give me the strength to do what is right, even if it is painful." As the first chords of the wedding march began to sound, Father Michael rose, his decision made. He knew that what he was about to do would change the course of many lives, including his own. But he also knew that he could not, in good conscience, allow this marriage to happen under the veil of lies and betrayal. With firm steps, he walked towards the altar, ready to face what would come next. The fate of Emily, Jason, and everyone present was about to take an unexpected turn, and Father Michael would be the catalyst for this change. St. Patrick's Cathedral was packed with guests, all elegantly dressed to celebrate the union of Emily and Jason. The buzz of animated conversations filled the air, mixing with the soft notes of music echoing through the sacred space. The anticipation was palpable, with anxious looks turned towards the main entrance, awaiting the bride's arrival. Father Michael stood at the altar, his serious countenance contrasting with the festive atmosphere around him. His hands trembled slightly as he held the Bible, the weight of his decision weighing more than the sacred book. He observed Jason, who was standing beside him, smiling nervously at the guests. The groom seemed to have regained his composure since their encounter on the street, but the priest could perceive the tension in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his forced smile. Suddenly the cathedral doors opened, and a reverent silence took over the environment. Emily appeared, radiant in her white dress, a delicate veil framing her face illuminated by happiness. She began her walk down the central aisle, each step bringing her closer to what she believed to be the beginning of her dream life. Father Michael felt his heart tighten. The sight of Emily, so full of hope and love, only reinforced his conviction that he could not allow her to marry without knowing the truth. As she approached the altar, the priest took a deep breath, gathering all his courage. When Emily finally reached the altar, handing her bouquet to the maid of honor, and turning to Jason with a dazzling smile, Father Michael stepped forward. His voice, normally firm and comforting, came out trembling when he began to speak. "My dear brothers and sisters in Christ," he said, his voice echoing through the cathedral, "we are here today to celebrate the union of Emily and Jason. But before we proceed with this ceremony, there is something I need to say." A murmur of confusion ran through the assembly. Emily looked at the priest with a perplexed expression, while Jason visibly paled. "Marriage," Father Michael continued, his voice gaining strength, "is a sacred institution based on love, respect, and above all, truth. It is my duty as a servant of God, and as someone who cares deeply for both of you, to ensure that this union begins with honesty." The silence in the cathedral was deafening. All eyes were fixed on the priest, some with curiosity, others with apprehension. "Emily," he said, turning to the bride, whose smile was beginning to falter, "you deserve to know the whole truth before making your vows. This morning, on my way to the church, I witnessed something that I cannot in good conscience ignore." Jason stepped forward, his face a mask of panic. "Father, please," he whispered urgently. But Father Michael raised his hand, silencing him. "I saw Jason," the priest continued, his voice trembling slightly, "in a compromising situation with another woman. He was betraying your trust, Emily." A collective gasp echoed through the cathedral. Emily staggered backward, as if she had been physically struck by the priest's words. Her face, previously radiant with happiness, was now pale and contorted in an expression of shock and pain. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It can't be true." Jason, realizing that his charade had been exposed, tried to explain. "Emily, my love, it's not what you're thinking. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I love you, you're the only one for me." But his words seemed empty, echoing meaninglessly in the silent cathedral. Emily looked at him, her eyes full of tears and disbelief. "How could you?" she asked, her voice broken by emotion. "On our wedding day." The confusion in the church quickly turned to chaos. Guests began to stand up, some shouting, others trying to approach the altar to better understand what was happening. Emily's parents rushed to support their daughter, who seemed about to collapse. Father Michael remained firm in his place, his heart broken by the pain he saw in Emily's eyes, but convinced that he had done the right thing. He watched as the bride, with trembling hands, removed her veil and threw it at Jason's feet. "It's over," she declared, her voice surprisingly firm despite the tears running down her face. "The wedding is cancelled." With those words, Emily turned and began to walk quickly towards the church exit, her parents following closely. Jason tried to go after her but was held back by some indignant guests. The scene that followed was pure chaos. Guests argued among themselves, some defending Jason, others expressing their indignation. Emily's family demanded explanations, while Jason's family tried to calm tempers. Amidst the confusion, Father Michael found himself being approached by several guests, some praising him for his courage, others condemning him for ruining what should have been a happy day. "How could you do this, Father?" asked Jason's mother, with tears in her eyes. "Destroy my son's wedding like this?" Father Michael looked at her with compassion. "Ma'am, I understand your pain, but I couldn't allow Emily to enter this marriage without knowing the whole truth. She deserved to make that choice with all the facts at hand." As the commotion continued around him, the priest observed Jason being confronted by several guests, his expression a mixture of shame and despair. The young man who had seemed so confident and happy just moments ago was now cornered, trying to defend himself against accusations coming from all sides. Slowly the crowd began to disperse. Some guests left to look for Emily, others stayed to demand explanations from Jason and his family. The festive atmosphere of moments ago had completely dissipated, replaced by a heavy cloud of disappointment and sadness. Father Michael remained in the empty church long after the last guest had departed. He knelt before the altar, seeking comfort and guidance in prayer. The echo of his sighs filled the now silent space as he reflected on the day's events and their consequences. Meanwhile, outside the cathedral, Emily was sitting on the steps, still in her wedding dress, surrounded by her closest friends and family members. Her face was marked by tears, but there was a spark of determination in her eyes. "What am I going to do now?" she murmured, more to herself than to others. Her best friend Sarah held her hand firmly. "You're going to move forward, Em. You're strong, much stronger than you think. This will pass and you'll overcome it." Emily nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. She looked at the busy street in front of her, observing people passing by, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. At that moment, something inside her transformed. The pain was still there, intense and pulsating, but along with it was born a fierce determination. "You're right," she said, her voice gaining strength. "This isn't the end. It's just a new beginning." As the sun began to set over New York City, casting long shadows across Central Park, Emily stood up, taking off her high-heeled shoes. With her bare feet touching the cold ground, she felt an unexpected connection with the city around her, as if she were planting roots in a new chapter of her life. "Let's go home," she said to her family. "Tomorrow will be a new day, and I need to decide what to do next." As the group moved away from the cathedral, Father Michael watched them from the door. His heart was heavy with the pain he had caused, but he also felt a pang of hope as he saw Emily's determined posture. He knew that the road ahead would be difficult for everyone involved, but he had faith that somehow, something good could emerge from this painful situation. As night fell over the city, the lights of St. Patrick's Cathedral went out one by one. The day that should have been a celebration had turned into a turning point in many people's lives. And as Emily walked away, carrying the shards of her shattered dreams, a new journey was about to begin. A journey of self-discovery, forgiveness, and perhaps a true and lasting love. Dawn arrived silently at Emily's apartment, the first rays of sun filtering through the curtain slits. She was awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, replaying the events of the previous day. The wedding dress, now a painful reminder, lay abandoned in a corner of the room. Emily slowly got up, feeling the weight of reality on her shoulders. She walked to the window and opened the curtains, letting light flood the room. The city was already pulsing outside, indifferent to her personal drama. For a moment, she felt insignificant in the vastness of New York City. The sound of her cell phone snapped her out of her thoughts. It was Sarah, her best friend. "Em, how are you?" Sarah's concerned voice echoed through the device. Emily hesitated before answering. "I'm surviving, Sarah. It still feels like a nightmare." "I can imagine," Sarah responded sympathetically. "Look, the girls and I were thinking, how about we take a trip? You know, to clear your head." The idea of a trip made Emily pause. She looked around the apartment, full of memories of her relationship with Jason. Every corner seemed to scream his name. "You know what, Sarah? I think that's exactly what I need," Emily replied, feeling a spark of enthusiasm for the first time since the disaster at the church. In the hours that followed, Emily found herself in a whirlwind of activities. She and her friends planned an impromptu trip across the country, starting with the coast of California. The idea was simple: escape the city, the gossip, the pitying looks, and the constant shadow of what could have been. While packing, Emily came across several wedding gifts that had already arrived. She stared at them for a moment, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. Then she made an impulsive decision. "Hello, Father Michael," she said on the phone. "It's Emily. Jaime, I have some wedding gifts here. I'd like to donate them to the church for those in need. Is that okay?" The priest's voice sounded surprised but welcoming. "Of course, Emily. It's a very noble gesture on your part. How are you feeling?" Emily took a deep breath. "I'm managing, Father, one day at a time. Actually, I'm going to travel for a while. I need to find myself, you know." "I understand perfectly," the priest responded gently. "May God accompany you on this journey, my child, and know that you'll always have a friend here when you return." After hanging up, Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The decision to donate the gifts seemed like a first step towards freeing herself from the past. The next day, Emily and her friends boarded a plane bound for Los Angeles. As New York faded into the distance, Emily felt a mixture of apprehension and expectation. It was as if she was leaving behind not just the city, but also a version of herself. The trip was long, but comforting. Between conversations, laughter, and moments of contemplative silence, Emily began to feel the first signs of healing. The constantly changing landscapes outside the plane window seemed to reflect the transformations she knew she needed to face. When they arrived in Los Angeles, the group went straight to a beachside hotel in Santa Monica. The sound of the waves and the smell of the ocean were a balm for Emily's wounded soul. On that first night, sitting on the sand with her friends, looking out at the vast Pacific Ocean, she allowed herself to cry openly for the first time since that fateful day. "You know," she said between sobs, "I'm not just crying for Jason. I'm crying for the Emily I was, for the life I thought I would have. It's like everything has crumbled." Sarah hugged her tightly. "Em, you didn't just lose a fiancé. You gained the chance to rediscover who you really are without anyone's expectations." Sarah's words resonated deeply with Emily. In the days that followed, she dedicated herself to exploring not only the natural beauty of California, but also the unexplored corners of her own personality. One morning, while walking alone on the beach, Emily spotted a group practicing yoga at sunrise. Impulsively, she joined them. The sensation of her body moving in sync with nature brought a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. "First time?" asked a middle-aged woman next to her after the class. Emily nodded, smiling shyly. "Yes, I've never done it before." It was liberating. The woman, who introduced herself as Lisa, smiled back. "Yoga isn't just about the body, you know. It's about finding balance, about reconnecting with yourself." Those words touched Emily deeply. In the following days, she returned for more classes, each session seeming to untie a knot in her heart. At night, sitting on the hotel balcony, Emily began writing in a journal, something she hadn't done since her teenage years. The words flowed, sometimes in a torrent of emotions, other times in calm reflections on her life and her dreams. A week passed quickly. Emily felt that something inside her was changing, growing. She still carried the pain of betrayal, but now that pain was accompanied by a renewed determination. On the eve of departing for their next destination, San Francisco, Emily decided to do something bold. She entered a local hair salon and asked for a haircut, her hair that previously reached her waist. "Are you sure?" asked the hairdresser hesitantly. Emily looked at her reflection in the mirror, seeing not just her face but all the versions of herself she had been over the years. "Absolutely," she replied with a confident smile. When the locks of hair began to fall, Emily felt as if she was freeing herself, not just from the long hair but from expectations and limitations she had imposed on herself for so long. Leaving the salon with a new shoulder-length cut, Emily felt light, renewed. Her friends were surprised but delighted with the transformation. "Wow, Em!" exclaimed Sarah. "You look beautiful, and you seem different. More you, you know." Emily smiled, running her hand through her short hair. "That's exactly how I feel, Sarah. More me." That night, the group decided to celebrate the new Emily at a local beachfront bar. Amidst laughter and animated conversations, Emily found herself observing a group of musicians playing folk music in the corner of the establishment. The soft melody and profound lyrics seemed to speak directly to her soul. On an impulse, Emily got up and walked over to the musicians. "Do you know The Times They Are A-Changin' by Bob Dylan?" she asked timidly. The guitarist smiled and began to strum the first chords of the song. Encouraged by her friends' smiles, Emily began to sing, her voice initially trembling, but gaining strength with each verse. "Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown." As she sang, Emily felt as if each word was healing a part of her broken heart. People in the bar began to turn to listen to her, some even joining in the chorus. When the song ended, the entire bar applauded. Emily, with tears in her eyes but a radiant smile on her face, gave a small bow. Back at the table, her friends hugged her, moved. "Em, that was incredible," said Sarah. "I didn't even know you could sing like that." Emily laughed, surprised at herself. "Neither did I. I guess I had forgotten many things about myself." That night marked a turning point in Emily's journey. She realized that this trip wasn't just about escaping the pain, but about rediscovering who she was and who she could become. The next morning, as the group prepared to depart for San Francisco, Emily took one last look at the Santa Monica beach. She took a deep breath, feeling the salty air fill her lungs. "Thank you," she whispered to the ocean, as if it could understand her, "for helping me start again." With a smile on her lips and a new light in her eyes, Emily joined her friends, ready for the next chapter of her journey. Her heart still carried scars, but now it also pulsed with renewed hope and the promise of new possibilities. As the car headed towards San Francisco, Emily looked out the window, seeing not just the passing landscape, but the reflection of a woman in transformation. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she was eager to find out. The car wound its way along the Pacific Coast Highway, and Emily observed the constantly changing landscape through the window. The verdant cliffs and rolling waves seemed to reflect the transformations she herself was experiencing internally. Arriving in San Francisco, the group of friends settled into a charming boutique hotel in the vibrant Mission District. The place pulsed with a young and creative energy that immediately captivated Emily. "Girls, how about we explore the city a bit tonight?" suggested Sarah, always excited for new adventures. Emily, who would normally have hesitated, surprised everyone with her enthusiasm. "Great idea. I've heard there are some incredible bars around here." The night in San Francisco was a revelation for Emily. They wandered through streets filled with bars and cafes, music escaping through open doors and mixing with the buzz of conversations. In a small pub, they came across a jazz quartet, the sweet melancholy of the saxophone and piano touching something deep in Emily. As she savored a cold craft beer, Emily found herself in an animated conversation with a group of local tech professionals. They talked about innovation, music, and dreams for the future. It was the first time since the wedding disaster that she felt truly present, engaged in the moment, without the constant weight of the past. "You're an architect?" asked Alex, one of the tech guys, his eyes shining with interest. "That's amazing. We were just discussing sustainable urban design." Emily surprised herself, by diving into the conversation with enthusiasm. She talked about her past projects, her ideas for greener and more livable cities. As she spoke, she felt a passion reigniting within her, one that had been overshadowed by the wedding preparations and recent trauma. "You know," she said, more to herself than to others, "I think I lost myself a bit in recent times. I forgot how much I love what I do." Sarah, who was observing the scene with a smile, leaned in to whisper, "It's good to see you like this, Em. Your eyes are shining again." In the days that followed in San Francisco, Emily found herself rediscovering not just the city, but herself. She visited contemporary art exhibitions at SF MoMA, lost herself among the books at City Lights bookstore, and spent hours admiring the eclectic architecture of the city's various neighborhoods. One afternoon, while walking through Golden Gate Park, Emily spotted a group of people practicing Tai Chi. She remembered the positive experience with yoga in Santa Monica and decided to join them. The instructor, a middle-aged man named Robert, welcomed her with a gentle smile. "First time, don't worry, just follow the flow." Emily was surprised by the gracefulness of the slow, controlled movements. As her body flowed from one position to another, she felt a calm spreading through her being. It was as if each movement was aligning not just her body, but also her mind and spirit. At the end of the practice, Robert approached her. "You have a natural gift for this," he commented. "Have you thought about practicing regularly?" Emily smiled, an idea forming in her mind. "Actually, I'm traveling now. But when I return to New York, I'll definitely look for a place to practice." That night, lying in her bed at the hotel, Emily reflected on how her life was taking unexpected turns. Just a few weeks ago, she was about to get married, her future seemingly mapped out. Now here she was, rediscovering old passions and finding new ones. The next morning, Emily surprised her friends with a bold proposal. "What if we extended this trip? We could go all the way to New York. What do you think?" The girls looked at each other, surprised but excited by the idea. "Em, are you sure?" asked Sarah, a smile forming on her lips. "What about work?" Emily took a deep breath, feeling a wave of conviction wash over her. "I'll call the office and ask for an extended leave. If it's not possible, well, maybe it's time to seek new challenges anyway." The decision to extend the trip brought new energy to the group. They spent the day planning routes, researching destinations, and discussing possibilities. Emily felt an excitement she hadn't experienced in years. It was as if each new destination represented a new version of herself to be discovered. Before leaving San Francisco, Emily made two important calls. The first was to her boss in New York. "Hello, Mr. Thompson," she said, taking a deep breath to calm her nerves. "I know it's an unusual request, but I was wondering if I could extend my leave for a few more weeks." To her surprise, Mr. Thompson was understanding. "Emily, after everything you've been through, I think you deserve this time for yourself. Take the time you need. Your talent will be welcome when you return." The second call was to her parents. Her mother answered, concern evident in her voice. "Sweetheart, how are you? We're so worried." Emily smiled, feeling a wave of affection. "I'm okay, Mom. Actually, I'm better than I've been in a long time. I've decided to extend my trip, explore a bit more of the country." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then, to Emily's surprise, her mother said, "I think that's a great idea, dear. You deserve to rediscover yourself, find your happiness." With the blessings of her boss and her family, Emily felt ready for the next stage of her journey. On the eve of their departure for Chicago, she decided to do something special. She took her friends to a small restaurant overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge to watch the sunset. As the sky turned shades of orange and pink, reflecting on the calm waters of the bay, Emily raised her glass in a toast. "To the new life we're building," she said, her voice full of emotion. "And to you, my friends, for being by my side on this journey." The glasses clinked, and for a moment everything seemed perfect. Emily looked at the horizon, where the sun was sinking into the Pacific. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time she was eager to find out. The next morning, as they boarded the plane to Chicago, Emily cast a last look at San Francisco. The city had been more than just a tourist destination. It had been a milestone in her journey of self-discovery. "Thank you," she whispered, not just to the city, but to all the experiences and people she had encountered there. The plane took off, carrying Emily and her friends towards new horizons. As the landscape changed below them, Emily felt that she was not just traveling across the country, but through herself, exploring uncharted territories of her own identity. With her heart full of expectation and her eyes shining with enthusiasm, Emily settled into her seat, ready for the next chapter of her adventure. Chicago awaited, with its bustling streets, vibrant culture, and who knows, new revelations about who Emily was becoming. As the plane soared through the clouds, Emily took out her journal and began to write. The words flowed easily, capturing not just the events of the past few days, but the feelings and reflections that were bubbling inside her. "Dear Diary," she wrote, "who would have thought that a trip that began as an escape would turn into a journey of self-discovery? Every mile traveled seems to bring me closer to myself. I don't know what Chicago holds, but I'm open to all possibilities. The Emily who embarked on this trip is no longer the same, and I can't wait to discover who I'll be at the end of it." With a smile on her lips, she closed the diary and looked out the window. The road stretched out before her, an open invitation to new adventures and discoveries. The plane landed at O'Hare International Airport in the early hours of the morning, when the sun was just rising over the Chicago skyline. Emily and her friends disembarked, immediately feeling the electric energy and humid air of the city. The atmosphere vibrated with a different intensity, more urgent and welcoming at the same time. "Welcome to the Windy City, ladies," exclaimed a smiling cab driver, helping them with their luggage. "You're gonna fall in love with this place." Emily smiled, feeling instantly captivated by the melodious accents and warm hospitality. They checked into a trendy hotel in the heart of River North. The bustling streets, the iconic architecture, and the distant sound of the L trains created a magical atmosphere. Eager to explore, Emily convinced her friends to head out soon after dropping off their bags. They wandered through the streets, marveling at the mix of historic buildings and modern skyscrapers. In Millennium Park, they came across a group of street performers breakdancing. Emily was mesmerized by the fluid, almost acrobatic movements of the dancers. The rhythmic beat of the boombox seemed to pulse through her. "Want to try, miss?" asked one of the dancers, noticing Emily's interest. She hesitated for a moment, but then, remembering her promise to embrace new experiences, accepted the invitation with a smile. The next few minutes were a mix of laughter and clumsy attempts to imitate the graceful movements of the dancers. Emily surprised herself with how free and light she felt, moving her body to the rhythm of the music. "You've got moves, girl," commented the lead dancer, Mike, at the end of the brief impromptu lesson. "If you stick around, come to our workshops." Emily thanked him, feeling energized and connected to the local culture in a way she never imagined possible. As the days passed, Chicago revealed its many facets to Emily and her friends. They explored the iconic landmarks, from the Willis Tower to Navy Pier, immersed themselves in the diverse neighborhoods, and indulged in the city's world-renowned culinary scene. One afternoon, during a stroll through the Art Institute of Chicago, Emily found herself drawn to a temporary exhibition on urban planning. The curator, a vibrant woman named Lisa, invited her to look around. "What do you see when you look at these designs?" asked Lisa. Noticing Emily's genuine interest, Emily observed a model that showed a sustainable city project. "I see potential, innovation. It's as if each element is not just about functionality, but about creating a harmonious living space." Lisa smiled, pleased. "Exactly. Urban planning isn't just about designing buildings, but about shaping communities, about improving people's lives." The two engaged in a long conversation about architecture, sustainability, and the future of cities. Emily shared a bit of her story, her background in architecture, and her current journey of self-discovery. "You know, Emily," said Lisa, her eyes shining with wisdom, "sometimes we need to step away from our usual environment to truly see our potential. Every experience, every new place, every person we meet, all of this becomes part of who we are and shapes our vision. The city is like a big canvas, and as architects, we are the artists." Lisa's words resonated deeply with Emily. She left the exhibition with a new perspective, not just on architecture, but on her own journey. That night, sitting on the rooftop of their hotel overlooking the Chicago skyline, Emily took out her journal and began to sketch. These weren't the meticulous architectural drawings she was used to, but free and expressive sketches of the scenes she had witnessed in Chicago. The lines flowed naturally, capturing not just the forms but the emotions and sensations that the city had awakened in her. As she drew, Emily realized she was creating not just a visual record of her trip, but a map of her own internal transformation. Each stroke on the paper was a reflection of a new facet of herself that she was discovering. "Who would have thought," she murmured to herself, a smile playing on her lips, "that I would find so much of myself so far from home?" The distant sound of jazz music and the smell of deep dish pizza in the air reminded Emily of where she was. Chicago, with its vibrant culture, diverse neighborhoods, and contagious energy, had become more than just a destination on her trip. It was a crucial chapter in her journey of self-discovery. With her heart full of gratitude and her eyes shining with expectation, Emily prepared for bed, eager for the new adventures that the next day in Chicago would bring. Her journey was far from over, but she could already feel the seeds of a new Emily beginning to bloom. The sun had barely risen when Emily woke up, feeling invigorated and full of energy. She decided to take a morning walk along Lake Michigan, enjoying the tranquility of the early hours. As she walked along the shoreline, observing joggers and early morning dog walkers, Emily reflected on how her life had changed in the past few weeks. Suddenly, a bold idea began to form in her mind. She took out her phone and, without thinking twice, called her boss in New York. "Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry to call so early, but I had an idea and wanted to share it with you," she said, her voice trembling slightly with excitement. "Emily, is everything okay? Did something happen?" he asked, concerned. "Actually, yes, I've rediscovered my passion for architecture, but in a completely new way. What would you think if I proposed an urban revitalization project inspired by the vibrant culture and diversity of Chicago?" There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, and then Mr. Thompson responded with enthusiasm. "That sounds fascinating, Emily. Tell me more about this idea." For the next few minutes, Emily explained her vision of a project that would combine elements of modern architecture with sustainable techniques, all incorporating the diverse cultural heritage and innovative spirit of Chicago. She talked about creating community spaces that would promote social interaction, inspired by the lively neighborhoods she had explored. "You know, Emily," said Mr. Thompson when she finished, "I think this trip was exactly what you needed. Your passion, your creativity, it's as if you've been reborn. When you return, let's discuss how we can turn this idea into reality." Moved and inspired, Emily hung up the phone and looked at the horizon, where the sun was already shining brightly over Lake Michigan. She felt a wave of gratitude for everything she had experienced so far, and a growing expectation for what was yet to come. Back at the hotel, Emily shared the news with her friends over breakfast. "Girls, I think I've found a new purpose for my career," she exclaimed, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. Sarah smiled, clearly happy for her friend. It's amazing to see how you've changed since we left New York. It's as if you've found a more authentic version of yourself." Sarah's words made Emily reflect. It was true, she felt more authentic, more connected to herself than she had ever been. The pain of betrayal and the cancelled wedding, which once seemed unbearable, was now just a distant memory, an experience that had led her to this moment of self-discovery. In the days that followed, Emily threw herself headfirst into her new project. She spent hours exploring different neighborhoods of Chicago, photographing architectural details, talking to locals, and making sketches in her notebook. Her passion for architecture, which had been dormant for so long, now burned stronger than ever. One afternoon, while sketching in Millennium Park, Emily was approached by an older gentleman who introduced himself as Professor James from the Illinois Institute of Technology's College of Architecture. "Forgive my intrusion," he said with a gentle smile, "but I couldn't help but notice your drawings. You have a unique eye for our city's architecture." Emily, flattered, shared her project idea with him. The professor listened attentively, asking insightful questions and offering valuable insights. "You know, my dear," he said at the end of the conversation, "we're always looking for passionate professionals to give lectures at our school. Would you like to share your ideas with our students before you return to New York?" The opportunity caught Emily by surprise, but she didn't hesitate to accept. In the days that followed, she fervently prepared for the lecture, gathering her notes, photos, and sketches. On the night of the presentation, Emily was nervous but strangely confident. When she stepped onto the stage of the packed auditorium, she felt a calm come over her. She began to speak, and the words flowed naturally. She shared not only her ideas about architecture and urbanism, but also her personal journey of rediscovery. Architecture isn't just about building structures, she concluded. It's about creating spaces that reflect and nurture the soul of a community. It's about honoring the past while embracing the future. The audience's response was overwhelming. Students and professors alike surrounded her after the lecture, asking questions, offering ideas and contacts. Emily found herself engaged in passionate discussions about the future of American architecture and the role of the architect in society. That night, lying in her bed at the hotel, Emily could barely sleep from excitement. She took out her journal and began to write, "Dear Diary, who would have thought that a trip that began as an escape would transform into a journey of professional rediscovery? I feel like I've found not just a new direction for my career, but a new purpose. The pain that brought me here seems so distant now. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm exactly where I should be." The days in Chicago flew by, filled with new experiences, ideas, and connections. When it came time to leave, Emily felt a mixture of sadness and expectation. Sadness for leaving a place that had become so special, but expectation for the future that awaited her. On the morning of their departure, Emily took one last walk through Millennium Park. She stopped in front of the famous Cloudgate sculpture, admiring its reflective surface. It was then that she noticed a group of tourists trying to take photos, but clearly frustrated with the reflections and angles. Observing the scene, Emily had a flash of inspiration. She remembered all the times she had faced similar challenges when photographing buildings for her projects. What if there was a simple solution for this, she thought. As she boarded the plane with her friends heading back to New York, the idea continued to simmer in her mind. An accessory for cameras and phones that could eliminate unwanted reflections and improve architectural photography. It could be something revolutionary for photographers, architects, and tourists alike. "Girls," she said, turning to Sarah and the others, "I think I had a crazy idea. What do you think of—" And so, as the plane left Chicago behind, Emily found herself on the threshold of yet another new adventure. Her journey of self-discovery had not only healed her broken heart, but opened doors to possibilities she never would have imagined. With her heart full of gratitude for the experience in Chicago, and her eyes shining with expectation for what was to come, Emily settled into her seat. She had much to look forward to upon returning to New York, and she could hardly wait to see what other surprises and inspirations fate had in store for her. The plane glided through the clouds, carrying Emily towards her future. As the Chicago skyline faded in the distance, she felt a sense of completion. This trip had been more than just an escape. It had been a rebirth. She was returning to New York, not as the heartbroken woman who had left, but as a stronger, more determined, and infinitely more inspired version of herself. With a smile on her lips and a notebook full of ideas, Emily closed her eyes, ready for whatever came next. Her journey of self-discovery might have started with a cancelled wedding, but it was ending with the promise of new beginnings in her career, in her personal growth, and perhaps one day in love. As the captain announced their descent into New York, Emily opened her eyes, feeling a surge of excitement. She was coming home, but to a home that would never be the same again, because she, Emily, was not the same, and she couldn't wait to see what this new Emily could accomplish.